So, welcome back everyone. We are once again gathered together to discuss about another book that we read last week. Yet again, we are slightly later because the book was too complex for me. I would say it was a bit over my head for some times, and rather than some basic mentions, I was quite complex for me, but I worked through it and was able to, I would say, understand decently. We have Anup with here once again. And how do you feel, Anup? How was the book for last week?
It was super difficult, man. It was very philosophical. I think I didn't have the right philosophical background to read this book.
Yep.
So after reading the book, like I just finished it today, I watched two videos which explained the main concepts of the book. Then I kind of got it, but still, I
Mm-mm.
think without the sufficient philosophical background, it was not good. It was not a good read for me.
Yeah. Yeah, the book is titled Myth of Sisyphus. It's by Albert Camus, and unlike our previous stories or books, this is more like an essay, a very long essay with a big background at the start, which accumulates into a story of Sisyphus and how he's trying to contextualize it in terms of daily human life. And yeah, before we delve into the topic of the book, I just want to say a few words. Is that I recommended this book because all over the internet it said well, it's one of the greatest books. So you know what we are doing? We're reading great book for the whole week, and that's why I thought maybe reading one of the greatest book will make us smarter. But rather, I would say made me realize how idiotic I am. You know, I think I'm quite smart, but no, turns out I am not. Uh, so that was it. I felt the real difference was in the citations that Camus makes. So he's speaking about different philosophers and their ideas, and I think the problem was that I didn't know what it meant, and it's totally understandable because it's like if I would start citing different movies and then the philosophy behind them, then people who have not watched that movie will feel like they are slightly detached from it and wouldn't necessarily understand it. And it felt something like that. It felt something like somebody is reviewing a book that I have not read about, and I think this is what most of our listeners feel as well. So there were some of the thoughts. What about you, Anup? Did you feel something special?
No, not really. So in the beginning, like, he started talking about suicide, right? The
Yeah,
philosophical suicide, I guess. So, like, what is he talking about, right?
yeah,
Um, but then he talks about absurdity, right? Like, what is absurd and what's not absurd, I guess.
yeah.
That was, I could understand that with some examples that he mentioned, but
Mm-mm.
I watched the video before, right? So, there was an even more clear example. So, one example is you don't know whether God exists or not, right?
Mm, mm,
So um, you can't prove that God exists. You
yep,
cannot prove that God exists, right?
yep,
And you still believe in a God, and that is one example of absurdity.
yep, yep.
So something contradictory, not contradictory in that sense, but paradox, I guess. And then but you still do it.
Mm,
So that is what he says like is absurd, right?
yep,
um s- uh, that point I got, but like there was a lot of parts which I actually didn't got at all.
yep.
um
Yeah.
the
I
last one, like yeah, but tell me, yeah.
No, I just wanted to add on your idea that the book talks a lot about. So it starts with suicide and then talks a lot about absurdity. And my understanding was that he was paraphrasing it, suicide as an absurd act. And throughout the book, he's trying to, in a way, say that even though these ideas are absurd, they are not alien to us and they have real implication in our life. And that was my understanding that uh, suicide is an absurd act, like other absurd acts, for example, following the god or proving and disproving ideas, or he cites many different philosophical examples, and something like that is worth our time and worth our effort to think about it and try to find a meaning to life, or at least the lack of meaning to life.
mm, mm, mm. I can also summarize the last part, right? Like the last chapter was actually the title of the book, The Myth of Sisyphus.
Mm-hmm.
And that story was like really nice, I felt, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so basically, it's about a guy who he is a king and who is also a tyrant in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he does a lot of sins
Mm-hmm.
and he deceives God, like God's multiple times, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, the first time it's like he goes to the underworld and there's like this one guy like who chains the dead people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
who keeps them in chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sisyphus asks how that chain works, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and then that god shows him how the chain works,
Mm-hmm.
and then like Sisyphus binds the god with the chain itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he actually evades
Mm-hmm.
death, right? And then he goes to the living world again, and
Mm-hmm.
people don't die, right? So
Yep.
it creates chaos.
Yep.
And then later on, another god comes and frees the god who is in
Mm-hmm.
chain, right? Then they catch Sisyphus again, but before Sisyphus gets caught, he tells his wife to throw him in the marketplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like he goes to the underworld where he complains like that his wife was throwing him in the market and stuff like that. And then the god says to him like, okay, go back, punish your wife, and come back,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then Sisyphus leaves the underworld again, and then he lives his life to his fullest,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then then the gods capture him again, and then they punish him to roll roll down like or push a rock onto the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as it approaches the mountain, the stone or the rock rolls back, and then Sisyphus has to do it again and again and
Yep.
again till the eternity, right? So he has
Yep.
to do a futile task till the eternity, and I think that's also signifies the absurdity,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So that was quite interesting. I found like the last chapter.
Yeah, it was at least Myth of Sisyphus is, I think, a well-known Greek mythology,
Mm,
and I think the writer has spoken, at least in this story, to show that the life we live is futile, right? The
mm, mm,
day-to-day daily work that we perform is not necessarily with meaning, and we are just probably just like Sisyphus pushing the rock to the top, and
mm,
then it falls back again and you have to start it over again.
mm,
And yeah, the that was quite interesting, despite of all the long platitudes that Camus writes during the start
mm.
of the book, that he ends the book with a interesting story, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Fun fact is the book is I think called Myths of Sisyphus and Other Essays. So if we were reading only about the myths of Sisyphus, then only the last chapter would be the valid story because that's the only essay that we're going to read. But I think reading at the start as well is something that is of value to us, at least to
Definitely.
contextualize the ideas that the writer has spoken about it here.
I think I'll come back to this book after I read other philosophical books. After having the sufficient philosophical background, then I think, read this book again with another angle.
Yeah, I mean, it's like telling somebody that, if I wrote a video essay saying about uh, Fight Club and its critique of capitalism, and some guy who hasn't watched Fight Club or read Fight Club comes across the video essay and reads it, and then he will feel completely out of context. And there was
Mm,
something I felt there. There are a few ideas that I really liked. One of my favorite ideas was about uh, people and fighting for their ideas, and he cites different people who, even though their ideas were not uh, good, but because they were willing to die for it, those ideas were something that is willing to live for it. What do you think
mm.
about what was the message that you liked from the book?
I don't know, man, nothing particular. Mainly because I didn't understand most of it.
Mm.
So, I don't
Yeah.
know, but this one, what you say, like sounds actually right, right? When also in the real life, like
Mm,
if there is an opinion which you yourself might find not so good, like
mm,
stupid even,
mm,
but that person is like really dedicated to prove it, or like he or she really believes in that idea, then you might think like, ah, maybe he or she is actually onto something, right?
mm, mm.
So I can see that, like I can see how that is valid, also in the real life.
Yeah, and I liked the way he prefaces a lot of ideas, especially about the humankind, where he says like the ideas about humankinds are the only the one worth thinking about and debating about, and not the objective world. And he gives example of, for example, Galileo and how he was willing to let go of his beliefs once he was captured by the church. And he had some, I would say, controversial ideas, at least from my point of view. The one other thing that I liked about the story was towards the end, he has this really nice message that, for example, the story of Sisyphus, the reason the story of Sisyphus is tragic, or in any case of punishment, is because he's conscious about what he's doing and the futility of what he's doing. So he's
Mm,
saying that if Sisyphus was unaware of what
mm,
of him, doing futile tasks, wasting his time basically,
mm,
but he has eternity of time. So just repeating it again and again, it shows that that's what gives him pain. So he also uh, draws parallel with a modern day worker who goes to his office every day doing the same tasks again and again,
mm,
and then oftentimes he's willing to work, but there will be time when he feels, at least he realizes, that what am I doing? It's all pointless, and then he has this existential crisis within him, and it becomes
definitely.
a pain. And that is one part that I really liked about how he was presenting the ideas about futility and the absurdity of our day-to-day life, and that even though
Mm.
it looks routine and mundane, these activity, the life that we live, are truly an absurd event.
I don't know, like, have you ever thought about that? As a child, I always used to think about these kind of thoughts, right? Like, imagine you would be floating in the space like
Yeah,
forever and ever and ever and ever,
yeah,
and I would always think like, oh my god, like how should that be, would I still be myself after aeons of time I'm floating in the space, right? Like,
yeah.
because I think my consciousness as such would stop, like, vanishing, like
Yeah.
would start vanishing,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, that would scare me.
No, I had never thought about that. Now that you say it,
Like,
it feels true. It feels like, I don't know how much you indulge in it, but I indulge in this activity of swiping through TikTok or YouTube
mm,
Shorts, and it's
mm,
almost like an endless. There's no end to end to it, right?
yeah,
And
uh,
after a
uh, uh,
certain time, you realize 2 hours have passed by, and
mm,
then your consciousness, you don't remember what you watched, but you were actively watching stuffs go by,
mm,
and but because you were not consciously viewing it, your your consciousness is just not there anymore. You're just
mm,
subconscious, and
mm,
you're
mm,
robotic almost. And I could relate to that, at least
mm,
in experience, but I had not thought about this as a child. But there's some things that I have thought as a child, which I think is kind of stupid now. Is I
mm,
always wanted to go to space, like be the guy who goes to Mars or a new
mm,
planet. And then now I think about it, and you have to travel like 5 years, 7 years with current technology,
mm,
and 5 years or 7 years inside a rocket. It's going to be that's a very very long period of time. There's a lot
mm,
changes
mm,
during the time, and now I think, why would I even want to be a kid? Like, why would I even think about it? The glory of new discovery was something much greater than the pragmatic situation of living a life.
mm,
And
mm, mm,
I think in some way this relates as well, because say is an 8 year old, they had done a poll all over the world and collected people who wanted to go to Mars, and I'll probably be there. I'll probably
mm,
choose it, and I'll probably be flying to Mars right now. Now,
mm,
it won't be a pain for me as long as I do not understand the futility of my travel to Mars. But say I have an awakening now, like I have now, about why would I even want to do that in mid-trip,
Yeah.
then it's going to be a cruel, cruel punishment for me. And yeah,
It's funny that you say that because I had a discussion once, like in my dormitory that I'm living right now. There is a person,
mm,
and with him, I had this discussion. So basically, um, in America, I think SpaceX they are planning to go on a Mars trip, right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's I don't know like how many years trips? 8 years or 10 years trip? I don't know.
I think it's a
Um,
long time.
exactly. So he was saying, that, yeah, wouldn't you want to go there and explore like places which no one has seen
Mm,
that sort of thing. And I was like, no, actually not. I would stay here. I have a comfortable life here. Why should
mm,
I go there without my family and friends? And he couldn't understand that. He's like, but no, you are actually exploring new places like that. You are actually moving humanity like forward, right? Like you
mm,
are actually advancing and exploring new stuff. And I was like, no, but that's not my priority. Like I want to
mm,
enjoy my life, right? So
mm.
he couldn't understand my point. So I think
Yeah,
it goes into the direction that we
yeah,
were talking about, right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, the day-to-day life we live is truly futile, but any kind of glorious life we would live is futile because we are not going to leave behind anything. And
Mm,
I like the message of the book in a sense that so if the life it's in itself really futile, then why
mm,
should you not consider suicide? Because uh, you're not making really your life has no value at all. And I
yeah.
think the writer argues in a sense that the life itself is of value and doesn't necessarily it doesn't bring value based on what it has to offer or what a person does. His Your life is just of value to it. It's pointless, but the pointlessness is the thing that's really pushing you along.
I think the problem is, like you don't know whether your life has value or not, right?
Mm,
So doing suicide is absurd, but living it is also absurd at the same time, right?
yeah, yeah,
So nothing makes sense in that way.
yeah, yeah. During the book, have you ever considered in your life that maybe there's no point in life, and then just thought about, and I would not say suicide, which would be a bit too dark, but rather,
Mm,
you know, a, a, a life of silence, a life of inactivity, inaction? Because I think that's also one of the point the writer makes is that people do suicide of their ideas, their dreams, in a sense
mm,
because yeah, it's pointless at the end of the day.
mm. I mean, these are like deep philosophical questions, right? And we don't have any answers. So,
No, but true, but
so,
you don't need to be
la-
right. You just want to know how you have felt. Maybe you have felt in the
mm,
past and thought about it, or maybe you have thought never thought about it, and maybe yeah, you can just say whatever you think.
I mean, I think I will come to that point where I've achieved all my aims and dreams.
Mm,
So my aims right now is like, I don't know, my parents, they want to go back to Nepal, so we need to buy a house there, we need to buy a property there and stuff like that.
mm,
So there are like still lot of tasks before me, you know.
mm,
Um, so until then, I think I'll be quite satisfied. But if
mm,
I reach a point where I have absolutely nothing to do, like
mm,
no, no problem to solve, then I
mm,
think like will this situation come, right?
mm,
So
mm,
I'll be like, what's the point of all this?
mm,
But
mm,
until now, no, not really.
mm. At least from my point of view, I have thought about life in such terms, right? What's the
Mm,
point of it? And a friend of mine back in high school had actually committed suicide, and it
mm,
really affected me for a long time. So
mhm,
tragically, he took his own life, and then it left me spiraling, thinking about life for a few days.
mm, mm.
Maybe I felt guilty for not being able to provide him with support, maybe. And like the writer
No.
says, you cannot really determine the cause of suicide because maybe someday somebody said something bad, and maybe I said something bad to him before he passed away. So you
Mm.
think stuff like that, and at that time I would think about what is the point of life at all, right?
Yeah.
What is the futility of it? And uh, over time, I have come in terms with the fact that there's probably no point in life. All the grandiose aim that I have is nothing, to be honest. I am only just something that I do, and uh, truth be told, the whole reading one book a week is really a pointless exercise that we are doing, but still, you know, it helps to feel the hours, it helps to make me feel happy, and I think that's what it counts.
Mm.
So that was indeed quite a book for this week. Next week it's Anup's turn. It's almost more than half the week done, so we'll probably be back soon. What book do you recommend this time?
This time it's a cosmic horror. It's called Color Out of Space from H.P. Lovecraft.
Cosmic horror, color out of space. Space. Okay. Is it a long book?
I don't know, I bought it in Kindle yesterday and it was like just 80 pages, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're going to read some H.P. Lovecraft for next week, and yeah, hopefully this is going to be a bit less tense and not as scary because I get spooked very easily. Any nightmares I get from now and the end of the year is going to be your responsibility. So, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I think it's a bit short, didn't feel that long. And we read Albert Camus this week, and next week we will be talking about H.P. Lovecraft. Thank you very much for reading the book and read along with us.
Thank you guys.